Hey guys, Jason here. On this video, I'd like to share the settings of the metal tone I use for my latest album, Heavy Metal Workout. I've had a few questions come in about that, so I'm going to break it down for you. Alright guys, so here we are. I've got a session of PreSonus Studio One opened up here, and that's the recording software that I use. And as you can see, we've got the Bias FX, Positive Grid's Bias FX plugin up, and I've got the amp called 92 Treble that I use. And this is the amp that I use, the amp sim rather, that I use to record the Heavy Metal Workout album that I released back in February 2016. So I want to go over the settings real quick. Now I believe the 92 tread plate is based on a Mesa Dual rectifier. I never really dug that far back to see if that was the intent, but I'm pretty sure it was. As you can see, my gain on the amp is not super high. It's at about 7.5 here. You can't see the numbers. If I toggle, you can see the numbers. Maybe they'll fix that someday. So it's about 7.5. Now that's not extremely low, but it's not extremely high either. It might be a little lower than what you're used to playing with or what you're used to seeing in other people's settings. To me, I like to go with the least amount of gain I possibly can with my metal rhythms, because too much gain often leads to a muddy sound. So next we have our bass. I've got my bass at about 5.5 here. Now bass is another element of the EQ that if you're not careful, and it often depends on what type of amp or amp sim that you're using, if you're not careful, too much bass can muddy up the tone as well. You always have to remember that the tone that sounds good in the bedroom that you're playing in your room may not necessarily sound good in the mix with everything, with bass and drums and other guitars and such. So, just be conscious of that. And that's the beauty of playing with plugins. You can always go back and just, change the EQ. So, now my mids typically run for, and again, this is my rhythm. This is the metal rhythms that I use. My mids typically run between 4 and 6. In this case, I had them up a little bit. I don't like them too high, because then you start, in my opinion, you start entering that more of a hard rock tone and not metal. But I don't like the mids cut down too low. I just don't prefer that sound. So somewhere between 4 and 6. Now I was using an RG, an Ibanez RG 1570, and the V8 and V7 pickups. For some reason, with that guitar, this just sounded a little bit better with the mids higher than halfway. So now with my ESP guitar, they've got the EMG, that one has the EMG active pickups. I'll crank the mids down a hair. So moving on to treble, let me toggle this so I can see. Okay, so not quite at 7, and treble's one of those things I don't want to overkill on that either, because then you get that real bright and tinny tone, and I don't want that. And that can be compensated often with your presence. My presence here is almost at 3. So that's pretty low for presence. Now, these are my typical metal settings with the exception of presence. The presence, depending on the amp, will either be at 3 or 4, or it might be at 6 or 7. And again, that depends on the amp simulator or amp that I'm playing through. So my master level here is straight up and down, and that's fairly typical for me, unless it's my lead channel. I have it cranked a little bit higher. Now for my leads, just a quick note, for my leads, the EQ is typically the same. I crank my gain up just a little more, maybe to like 8.5. And I might cut the treble up just a little more as well, and I might add a hair more presence just so I can cut through the mix with that. Now I want to move on real quick to the cabinet. So here with Positive Grid, you've got your head and you've got your cab, and typically when you bring up whatever amp you bring up, it's going to automatically pair that cabinet with it. But you can change that. There's a little section over here. You've got several cabinets in here. I find, and again, this is just my opinion, I find this amp, the Mesa Dual, sounds better with the cabinet that it's paired with, and that's the 412 tread plate. And you've got 2 mics you can use down here. I'm glad I only have 2 mics, because sometimes I don't like to have a lot of options, because then I start messing with tones and I end up spending more time trying to dial in a tone than I do actually writing music like I should be doing. So you've got 2 pretty cool mics here, the C414 and the SM57. I think the SM57 cuts through the mix a little better. However, I will tell you that I record 2 rhythms, as most of you know. So what you're seeing now is the rhythm for the left speaker. That one's pan hard left. For the rhythm that you'll hear in the right speaker, hand hard right. That one I'm actually using the C414, and I've got the mic a little bit closer to the cabinet. Now you can move the mic around. You can move around here, and you can move around here as well, and away from the speaker or so. And as you'll see, I don't have hardly any effects at all. There's a delay here just in case I want to use it at times. I can just turn it on, but I rarely ever use that. I don't like a lot of effects on metal rhythms because, again, I'm real conscious about not having the sound become muddy. And to me, the more you add to it, you run that risk. I really like to hear my notes. I want people to be able to distinguish changes and hear those notes and certain nuances that you have, when changing notes and that sort of thing. And to me, less is more. I do use a tube screamer sound, and as you can see, these settings are quite typical for metal. My tone is almost up and down here. My drive's all the way down. My level is about 6 or 7 here. 6, okay. So it's right at 6 there. So guys, that's pretty much it for my metal tone. And again, this is the tone that I used for my album Heavy Metal Workout. So definitely check that out. It's on iTunes, Amazon, CD Baby, and all of the major online retailers. Guys, I hope this helped you, and I'll see you on the next video with metal.